Like, there are people who get to do what you love, and if there's not, you could be the first one. And then you could be the motivation for people to do what they love.
If you're going to admit all the things that you're bad at, I want you to also admit all the things that you're genuinely great at.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another very special, as always, episode of Next Level University, where we teach you how to level up your life, your love, your health, and your wealth. We hope you enjoyed our latest episode. It was last week's live Q&A, How Do I Focus on My Health When Those Around Me Don't Care About It? Today, for episode number 704, not 600, what is your superpower?
Okay, so the context of this episode is basically we call it superpower or your genius zone. And we all have inherent strengths and weaknesses, so there's a ton of examples of this. But if you think about some of the most successful people on the planet, a lot of them collided with their genius zone early. So, for example, Tiger Woods with a golf club in his hands at 4, Michael Jordan with a basketball in his hands at a very young age. I know Meryl Streep started acting at a very young age. Serena Williams started playing tennis as a kid. So a lot of times we all have inherent strengths and weaknesses. Some people are naturally good at math. Some people are naturally good at creative writing and different things like that. So what we want to help everyone out there do is, maybe you have a purpose, and maybe your purpose is to serve others. I think everyone's purpose on some level is to serve others. But what is the vehicle at which you're going to serve others? Obviously, for Kevin, podcasting, speaking, coaching, and consulting are our vehicles to do our purpose, which we're doing literally right now. So how does someone actually find their genius zone? There's a lot of questions that you can ask yourself, but that's what this episode is about.
And I think when you do find it, and I'll ask Alan some questions, but when you do find it, it's how do I spend the most amount of time in my genius zone doing my superpower, and how do I eliminate much of the time that I'm not spending there? I had a friend recently message me, and him and I were talking, and he said, I've just had so many amazing opportunities lately. One of my mentors wants me to take over his company, and he's going to pay me a salary, and I won't go into numbers, but he's going to pay me a salary to do it. Unfortunately, it's not what I'm making at my current job. Like, do you think I should take the leap? And I said, honestly, unless you want to be the best in the world at your job, I would take the leap.
Right.
Because you not being in your quote-unquote genius zone is holding you back. Now, will there be some certainty that you have to give up to get there? Sure. But the longer you spend in the genius zone, your genius zone, the more results you're going to get.
For sure.
So what are the questions somebody should ask themselves?
One of them is, what am I ridiculously good at? This is not a question that is, unfortunately, accepted in society, really, because we're all kind of taught and conditioned to not celebrate ourselves, because that's kind of seen as like an ego thing. But I want everyone to sincerely sit there and look at, if you're going to admit all the things that you're bad at, I want you to also admit all the things that you're genuinely great at. And I think it's really important. So the first question is, what am I truly great at? What am I genuinely awesome at? What comes easy to me that actually is very, very difficult for other people? I remember in college, I was in electrical and computer engineering, most difficult part of my life in terms of academics, like unreasonably challenging.
Sounds terrible.
It was very, very hard. So many all-nighters. I was around genuine geniuses, and it was very hard for me to keep up, especially with people who were coding at little kids. One of my close roommates and friends at the time actually was on Tech TV at 13. So he modded the original Xbox and Halo, and he did all this crazy stuff. He was literally on TV for this at 13 years old. So, of course, I could feel a little bit inferior. But one thing that I do know is that while I wasn't as tech savvy or as good at coding or as good at computer engineering, what I was really good at is what a lot of people refer to as the C gene. If you're an engineer, some people consider it the C gene, meaning engineers that can communicate effectively. So everyone out there, think of someone who's extremely, extremely math-minded, extremely, extremely left-brained, and they're very, very, very bright, but they're not very good at communicating with other people. That is someone who's brilliant, but probably not very good at communicating their ideas. So you can have the best ideas in the world, but if you can't communicate them to people, you're not going to be as effective as a leader. And so for me personally, I realized very quickly in college that math was a strength for sure, academics was a strength, but what was my real strength in corporate, when I went into corporate, was actually my ability to communicate engineering concepts to the marketing team. Because in a tech company, they obviously make technology products and software, And I was able to understand how the products actually work and communicate them to the marketing team, where the marketing team is supposed to bring those products to the consumer in a way that's deeply meaningful to them. And I'll give you one tiny example. So Steve Jobs used to say, I'm going to put 1,000 songs in your pocket. You don't need to know anything tech in order to understand that that's something that you want as a consumer. See, Steve Jobs was also that of like understanding the technology so he can build great products for a consumer, with the consumer in mind. What does the consumer care about? And so it's kind of what I think my Genius Zone is, bridging these two worlds, bridging the engineering mind with the masses. And even when it comes to self-improvement and self-development, a lot of that is what I'm doing now. But this is not about me. This is not about Kevin. This is about you. So what is it that you are sincerely great at? What is it that comes easy to you that other people find really difficult? If you can answer those questions, that's a good indicator.
I was on a coaching call with somebody the other day, and we were going through this because she's like, I'm not really sure what I want to do. I'm not sure where I want to go in the future. And I went through some of these questions with her, and I said, like, what are you just really, really good at? Like, just really good that people have said you're really good at. And she said, helping kids. And I said, that's amazing. That's amazing. Okay, how does it make you feel when you help kids? And we went through this whole thing. And it's interesting because when you look back and reflect, I'll never forget, shout out to Cope Daddy. Cope Daddy, if you're listening, you'll remember this. Cope Daddy was like, hey, I have some friends, and I'd love you to meet them. They're awesome. I think you'd really get along well with them. It's a group of some female friends that I have. And I was like, awesome. Like there's 4 of them. They're awesome. They seem awesome by what Copeland said. Like, let's do it. So we ended up going bowling with them. And we went back to their place, and we literally stayed up until like 2 or 3 in the morning just having deep conversations. And it was literally like I was just going off on rants about like, what do you want to do with your life? And, oh, you should do it because of this, and this is what you're... And it was like, in retrospect, of course, I love talking about the stuff I love talking about. You know, you and I had deep conversations. Matt and I had deep conversations. Taryn and I have deep conversations. And it's just, I think it's easy to connect the dots when you look back. Mm-hmm. But how do you know what you're... Obviously, part of your superpower is something you enjoy doing, right? Because if you don't enjoy it, you're not going to want to be superhuman at it for long. How do you know what you enjoy if you haven't done it?
You won't if you haven't done it. But there's so many patterns. So what Kevin just alluded to is a Steve Jobs quote of, you cannot connect the dots looking forward, you can only connect them looking backwards, but you have to actually look backwards. So that's what we're doing here. You go out in life and you have experiences and you try new things, new persons, places, things, and ideas. And then what you do is if you reflect, you can see common patterns, you can see common threads. So for example, for me, what's a common thread? Coaching. So even when people didn't want help, I was always trying to help them. And I realize now in hindsight that was actually a major poor investment of my time, because trying to help people aspire to greater when they don't have aspiration is actually really, really difficult. And I would much rather help someone who already wants to come to me for that. And fortunately, I'm at that place. But connect the dots looking back. What about your life? What common thread was always there? What's the through line? A through line, by the way, is basically a theme of a speech or the theme of this episode. So the through line in this episode is, what is your superpower? What's the through line for your life? And so I've got a Venn diagram up here, and Kevin and I have given speeches, and a lot of times people will ask us, like, how do I find my purpose? How do I find my vehicle? How do I find what I'm supposed to do in the world? What is my greatest level of growth and contribution? First of all, it is your responsibility to find it. Kevin and I were not even searching for it really, at least not consciously, until after we had near-death experiences. Don't wait for that. Search for it now, right now, on this episode. And I remember it was the second time Kevin ever interviewed me. It was on, I think, episode 4 or 6 of his show.
I'm sure it was great.
The Hyper
one it was.
Conscious Podcast. I remember we were up in New Hampshire at Kevin's place, and he was drinking Guinness at 11 a.m. in the morning.
Yep, big
and
fan.
I was drinking Red Bull. You got me Red Bull on
I did. Your
ice.
Caffeine. I didn't have an alcohol addiction, but I liked my Guinness, and you liked your Red Bull.
I liked my caffeine, yes. And you asked me, how do I find my purpose? And I pulled up something similar to this. This is a Venn diagram. So 4 circles, and in the center is a true north. In the upper left circle is, what do you love to do the most? Now remember, what you love to do does not mean you always want to do it. Kevin and I both love lifting weights, genuinely, but that doesn't mean we always want to go to the gym. There are times where we don't.
Today.
But you do, literally. But you do know you love something because you're always glad you did. Very rarely do we get out of the gym and say, I wish I didn't do that. Okay? So what do you love most? That's the upper left bubble of the Venn diagram. Upper right, what are you the absolute best at doing? Again, ask your friends, ask your family, but more importantly, what if strangers told you you're awesome at? Okay? Third, what does the marketplace pay the most for? So the example that I use at my coaching calls with this is kind of funny. It's if you can spit a cherry pit 50 yards, nobody really cares. Maybe you'll get in the Guinness Book of World Records, or maybe you'll be in a circus or whatever. But if you can throw a football 50 yards, see, that's marketable. There's a market for that. There's a lot of people in this country who love American football. Okay, so that's the third one. The fourth one, what do you believe the world desperately needs more of? This is what breaks your heart. What injustice in the world upsets you? I was at Walmart grocery shopping yesterday because Emilia and I are meal prepping, and literally I was not using any plastic bags because Emilia is so passionate about the environment. She doesn't want us using any more plastic. Short story, as a kid, she always wanted to go and see the Great Barrier Reef, and she eventually went, and she found out that it was the Great Barrier Graveyard. And even just talking about this is kind of depressing, so I'll get off that topic. But the point is that it breaks her heart to see animals die. We were on the way to the gym, and literally there was a dead squirrel in the road, and it upset her, genuinely. We were also watching a movie called Dances with Wolves, and spoiler alert, there's the American soldiers in that movie aren't kind to animals or the wolf in that movie, and that broke her heart. She was nearly in tears. So nature is super important to her. So obviously the horrible things that humanity has done to nature, it bothers her a lot. And what breaks her heart is also an indicator of what her purpose is. It is part of her purpose to help the environment, to help nature, to help people be kinder to the environment. So for you, if you're out there, what breaks your heart? What injustice in the world do you want to solve? For Kevin and I, it was not having fathers and not having strong male role models growing up. And now we want to provide a strong male role model to kids. And that's part of our purpose and our mission. So that's where your purpose lives. That's where your genius zone is. It's in the intersection of what you're best at, what you love most, what breaks your heart, in other words, what you're going to solve in the world, and what the marketplace can actually pay you a lot for. One of the reasons I call myself a coach and not a therapist is because, or a business consultant rather, and not a coach or a therapist, is because business consultants traditionally make a lot more money. I'm really coaching, but when I call it a consultant, a business consultant, it's a more marketable thing in the consciousness of business owners. And so there's a lot of nuances to this, but that's really how.
And it's once you start to see a pattern, things really start to emerge. We were at the airport when we were going to Colorado, and not only am I super anxious because I haven't flown in however long it's been because of COVID, but there's this family, and the father is drunk, and the kids are jumping all over the place, and he's just not being kind to his children or his girlfriend or wife. I don't know if they were married or not. But it was just depressing. It was just depressing. You could tell that he just didn't really care. He just wanted to get drunk because he kept saying, I just need to go get another beer. And it was very depressing for Alan and I. We talked about it after. And it's and nothing against these people. It's just a reminder of that's one of the passions and the purposes that we have. And one of our superpowers, I think, is being good men. Because we didn't necessarily have a ton of that growing up for whatever reason it was. And I think that one of the reasons we struggle with a lot of, I don't want to say a lot of human beings, but certain human beings is because they have a ton of ego. And we know that they're not trying to be the best men that they can be, particularly.
Right.
I think that's why we have so many female listeners. Because one of our goals is to improve as men, and the goal is for you to meet us behind the scenes and say oh, those guys are as good behind the scenes as they are in person. And that's or as good behind the scenes in person as they are on the microphone and the camera. And that's one of the reasons why we do things the way we do. It's all connected. It's all connected. If speaking is your superpower, then you dig into something that really, really makes you sad. And then that's something you can talk about. And can you just speak to the importance of finding and then investing as much time as possible in your superpower and why that's so important early on?
Yeah.
If you believe it is.
I do. So
Hi everyone, my name is Bianca Thomas. I am the host of the WhyPower Podcast, and I'm also a client of both Kevin and Alan. I had the absolute pleasure and honor and honestly the blessing of meeting both of these extraordinary men at the beginning of their journey, when the Hyperconscious podcast was just at its beginning. And to keep it short and sweet, these two guys have completely changed my life. Because of them, I've been able to really learn how to love myself, to express myself, to go past my fears and have the courage to do things that I never thought I would have done, like having my own podcast. I'm a little over time, but I just want to say, if there's anyone out there who wants a coach, who wants help, who wants two people to lean on, it's these two guys. They are rare, extraordinary men, and I'm so lucky to have them in my life.
This is something that a lot of people don't necessarily like when I talk about it, and it's basically this. I remember I said this. I said if LeBron James is doing his own laundry, that's a mistake. That doesn't mean I think LeBron James should be above laundry, but he could spend that same hour literally changing so many children's lives or so many people's lives because he has influence. Now, LeBron James gets to do what he wants, right? I get that. But I do think that all of us have a responsibility to maximize our contribution. And quite frankly, the truth of the matter is, statistically speaking, Kevin and I can have a bigger global impact from these mics than we can mowing our lawn right now. And that's why we should, unless we love mowing the lawn, in my opinion, we should invest more time into podcasting, speaking, coaching, and consulting than we do mowing lawns, because that's a bigger global impact. A lot of people don't like that I talk about that. So that's the first thing, is understanding once you find your genius zone, you're going to be misunderstood when you try to stay there. And that doesn't mean you want to have blinders on, because I do believe in holistic self-improvement, health, wealth, and love. But why is it so important? Mastery is something that is not talked about enough, I believe, because I think all impact is actually a byproduct of mastery. So, for example, if you're mastering emotional regulation, the byproduct of that will be a better intimate relationship. Because when challenges come your way, you won't yell at your partner. You won't freak out. You'll have emotional regulation. You'll stay centered. And so mastery is everything, but it's drastically not talked about enough. And mastery comes down to a simple formula of prep, rep, reflect, perfect. So prep is the prep work that Kevin and I did prior to jumping on these mics, of going through what episodes we want to do and what we want to talk about and what are the stories that we want to share with you. Rep is what we're doing right now, which is actually performing right now live. Not live, but right now it's live while I'm recording this. Prep, rep, reflect. After this gets over, Kevin and I will reflect on how well we did. We just recorded an episode before this, and we were like, honestly, let's do better on the next one, because that was good, but I think we can do better. Okay? And then perfect is basically what are the tweaks we need to make. Today, we literally changed the depth of the focus on the camera to make sure that the shot looks better for those of you who view on YouTube.
Which has given me extreme anxiety. If you notice, if you're watching this on YouTube and you see me looking around, it's because I'm trying to make sure we're in focus.
Perfect. So that's mastery. Kevin and I are mastering our craft as often as possible. One of the reasons we do 7 episodes a week is, yes, we want to bring holistic self-improvement into the pocket of every person on this planet 7 days a week for free, but it's also we want to master speaking. We want to get better at this, and the more you do it, the better you get within reason. So once you figure out what it is that you want to master, just understand that your mastery of that thing is the bottleneck to the impact that you can have. I mean, if you're not a good actor, you're probably not going to impact your audience. And that's just one example of thousands.
And this is the other thing, too. Are you willing to go all in on, and whatever that means in the beginning, are you willing to go all in on your superpower? Because there are so many people out there who are really, really, really genuinely amazing at something. Like, I can think of so many people who are just way better at things than I am. I don't want to say I could never catch up, but like it would take me more effort to catch up than it would take for them to forget everything.
Right.
It would be very, very difficult. But there's this little block of belief that I couldn't do that. And I had this talk with somebody the other day. I literally said, like, okay, now that we know what you're really good at and what you're really, really desiring to get out of life, which can be two scary things when you figure them out, are you willing to actually put in the effort to get them? Because right now we're at a crossroads of you have a new awareness of what you'd like out of life that you know is possible because people are doing what you want to do. Are you willing and ready to start leaning into your superpower? Because imagine if you got to do your superpower every day. Like, there are people who get to do what you love, and if there's not, you could be the first one. And then you could be the motivation for people to do what they love. And it's that fine line of, like, how do you get over the chasm of, okay, I'd love to podcast every day. Remember, episode 7. You can go back and listen to episode 7. It's called Chase Your Effing Dreams. One of my favorite solo episodes of the Hyperconscious podcast ever. But I basically said this is what I wanted my life to look like. Again, I had a lot of influence and help from people around me, Alan, my friends, mentors, all of that. But I said in that moment of, like, if I could make that my life.
Yeah, but you kept showing up.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
But I do want to make sure I give credit. If you left this room, I'd be like, I did this on my own. This was all me. Everything was me. That guy that you hear is me in a different voice. But I think that when I said that of, like, oh, if that could be my life. And again, it's hard to remember that. I wish I stored that in a bottle somewhere and I could sniff it every once in a while just to remember what that moment felt like.
That's now Kevin's memory point of entry.
The sniff.
That was
right up.
You're not going to drink it or smoke it. You want to sniff it.
I want to sniff it right up to the brain.
Yeah.
If I could remember what that was like, again, my journey was obviously unique. Everybody's is. But how do you get over that chasm of, okay, ideal life would be me doing this superpower, staying in my genius zone for the rest of my life. How do you take that from a thought to, like, even a semi-reality?
Well, I remember in 2012, I think, 2013. I don't remember exactly, but I remember seeing one specific video of Kevin on Facebook. He did a Facebook Live, and this was long, long, long before Facebook Lives were, like, even a thing.
Yeah. It wasn't.
I watched it.
It wasn't even live. There was no live.
There was no live?
No, you recorded.
It was a video?
I think you recorded an 8-minute video.
I watched the whole thing.
I appreciate
genuinely.
that.
And you were rambling, but it was
Definitely.
awesome. And it was contemplative. It was very hyper-conscious, again, acutely aware. It was a deep conversation. It was like, I remember specifically, it was about, do you deserve to be happy? And you were basically trying to articulate. No offense, you were trying.
This was before Hyperconscious.
Yeah,
way before the podcast.
Yeah, I think we're in your early 20s, honestly. I think you were dating Amanda at the time.
Probably.
Yeah. So, but what you were trying to articulate in hindsight, again, connecting the dots, looking back, is that basically entitlement will keep you from happiness because then you'll stop working for it. If you think you deserve to be happy by default, you're not going to put in the work. And that's basically what he was trying to say.
Well, this has always been my thing. And I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, it's important.
You deserve what you work for. That's always been my point of, like,
right.
If you don't work for it, you don't deserve it. You don't deserve success by default. I think I would like everybody to be happy. But I also think even back then, I knew happiness wasn't what everybody thought it was. I just didn't know what it was.
Right.
So I think my goal was to say, like, if you really want to be happy, you deserve happiness to the level that you're willing to work for. That was my goal in that video.
And so for everyone listening, think about this for a second. What if Kevin didn't have that belief? That one belief that you don't deserve to be happy by default, you deserve what you work for. That's why he kept showing up. That's why episode 7 wasn't just one episode. That's why at 700 we're sitting here talking about how it all manifested, it all happened into reality. It's because he had that one belief of, I don't deserve to just get it by default. I have to work for it. And if it wasn't for that, there's no chance this would all be a thing. This studio was built by Kevin. Like, the work is what he always focused on, luckily, because if not, there's no way this would be a thing. Seriously. But that said, so if you're out there right now and you're like, I don't know what my purpose is, I don't know what my vehicle is, I don't know how to find it, keep searching. Keep contemplating. Connect the dots looking back. To my point, Kevin in 2012, I think, I don't know why I keep coming up with 2012, but that's when you did that video, I think.
I could find out. It would just take a while.
I think it was 2012, which is literally almost a decade ago. He was talking deep conversations online. That was kind of like a mini podcast. And maybe he didn't consciously know that was his purpose yet, but his purpose found him. You got to keep putting yourself out there and experimenting. You'll know when you find it. And so last question for Kev is this, like, how do you know that this is your purpose? And I have my answer as well, but I would love to hear yours.
How do I know that this is my purpose? Yeah. There's nothing I'd rather be doing.
Yeah.
again, I think it's easy to focus on the stress and the overwhelm that comes with being having a business and being an entrepreneur and all that, growing a business and clients and money and all that happy jazz. But it's like, I'm very blessed because I get a lot of reminders. So where I live now, you got to do a U-turn to get to the lights to get on the highway. And at the lights, before you get on the highway, there's always these insulation trucks. So there must be like an insulation company down that street. And I always see them pulling out of that street and getting on the highway. And I remember what that was like. Today at 7:25, I was headed here. And I saw like 5 of those trucks. And I know where they're going. I know where they're going. And I know what they're doing because I've done that. So I get these little reminders of like, look, yeah, I know things were tough. And like, yeah, I know you were broke. And I know there's a lot of money going out. And there's more money coming in. But there's this and there's this and there's travel and there's uncertainty. But like sometimes the uncertainty of fulfillment, all the time, the uncertainty of fulfillment is way better than the certainty of not being happy and aligned.
Fire answer, Kev. And I think that honestly, when I asked you like, what is it? How do you know this is your purpose? I think fulfillment is the answer.
Yeah.
I feel that way so strongly. 800 plus coaching calls, blah blah blah. Seriously, you see a common pattern. You're not fulfilled in advance of doing the thing, but after you're done doing it, you're like, yeah. Even when you did a poor job, you still know like that's something I want to be better at.
Yeah.
And it always has to do with something congruent with your genius zone, and your genius zone, if focused on, will contribute to the world in a positive way if you do it right. And fulfillment is the tell-all. I'll say that over and over and over again. I think at some point I'll create a speech called Optimizing for Fulfillment and maybe even write a book about it. But optimizing for fulfillment is what I'm doing. It's what I've always been trying to figure out from a very young age, and I'll go after this, but I was on a coaching call with Brandon. Brandon's actually in the midtro. And I was talking to him, and I was taking him through this sort of hierarchy of needs. Maslow has his hierarchy of needs, and I have my own Jeff's hierarchy of needs, my own version. And I remember saying this. I was like 20 years old. I'm like, Mom, I'm trying to find the formula to not end up old and miserable like I see so many other people. I actually at the time said like everyone else because it was a cynical way to say it, but I was a young kid looking around getting scared at how many people were like, oh, the high school is the best years of your life. Like, no, it's not. No, it is not. I can tell you for sure it's not. If you do it wrong, it certainly will be. So what's the formula for success and happiness and fulfillment? I finally have this hierarchy of needs that I take my clients through. And we talk about all of this on the show. We just don't talk about the whole framework. But I remember Brandon, he was like, dude, I've never learned this before, because he had no idea it was mine. He's like, I've never learned this before. Like, where did you learn this? And I said, Brandon, you've never learned this before, man, because this has never existed before. This is brand new. Like, no one's ever done this. This is my own sort of thing. But my point is this. That was always my purpose. Connecting the dots, looking back, my purpose on this planet was to help come up with a framework, a formula, an algorithm for how to actually maximize and optimize this life for success, joy, happiness, fulfillment, love. That was what Kevin and I were always kind of doing, and I think in some ways we were destined to meet and team up because we're both kind of on that mission. I mean, what are the chances? He was doing videos in 2012 about you don't deserve things by default, you have to work for them, and I happen to value work ethic and self-discipline above everything. It's not a coincidence looking back, but what you have to do is try to accelerate those coincidences by getting in your genius zone and staying and having the courage to lean into it.
You might not know this. Can you pull up the thing so I know what episode?
Oh, yeah,
you might not know this, but I co-founded a brand before this. It was BEFD, Better Every Effing Day.
Really?
Yeah, so I was into self-improvement before I was into self-improvement.
God damn.
It's the whole thing. And I was coaching.
I actually did know that.
I was coaching people back in the day. Like, there was literally like girls that I would meet and like not end up dating that I would like help. I would like just coach them. It's like it's all
even before you knew you were a coach.
Yeah. I didn't know what I was talking about really. I was really good at like relationship coaching though. That was like a thing. I don't know why. All right, ladies and gentlemen, as we spoke about so eloquently in our Wednesday episode, we released our first online training course. Do you like how I just gave myself a little bit of pain?
Strong work,
because it wasn't very eloquent. $47. I'll hit you with a price first. Money back guarantee. If you don't find value in 30 days, send it back. We'll give you your money. Our goal is just to help you get to the next level. It's what we've learned over the years. 5 things. I'm not going to go through them here, but it's simple. It's the fundamentals, but sometimes you feel stuck. Sometimes you feel lost. Sometimes you feel lonely. Sometimes you feel like you just need a kick in the butt. That's what this course will do for you. Go to nextleveluniverse.com, click courses. It'll take you right there. And again, you can do it with no risk.
No one looking back is ever like, oh, I wish I'd read less books or I wish I took less courses. Like, self-improvement is everything. Check this course out, and we will rock and roll.
You dig it?
I do.
Ladies and gentlemen, we love you. We appreciate you. Up next, we have creating a next level morning routine. Every single day starts with your morning, so make sure you're starting in a fire way. We love you. We appreciate you. And as always, we do not have fans. We have family.
Talk to you soon.
Bye.